The year was 2015. Moscow's Red Square was the stage for its Grand Victory Day parade. Amidst the familiar columns of military might, a new silhouette emerged. It was sleek, imposing, and utterly distinct from anything seen before. This machine moved with a quiet confidence that belied its formidable appearance. Onlookers, military attachés, and defense analysts across the globe watched with rapt attention. The air itself seemed to crackle with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Russia had just unveiled a new marvel of military engineering, a vehicle that promised to redefine ground warfare as the world knew it. The moment was charged with significance, a clear signal of intent. This was the public debut of the T-14 Armata. It was more than just a new tank. It was Russia's bold statement to the international community, a declaration of its resurgent technological prowess in the domain of armored vehicles. The Armata was not presented as a mere incremental upgrade to existing platforms. Instead, it was championed as a generational leap, a clean-sheet design engineered for future conflicts. The Kremlin intended for the T-14 to be a symbol of its modernized military, capable of challenging the established order. The initial glimpses hinted at a machine built with an entirely different philosophy, focusing on technologies previously only theorized. First impressions were dominated by its strikingly futuristic design. The most radical feature was its unmanned turret, a significant departure from traditional tank architecture which typically places crew members within it. This innovation alone suggested a profound rethinking of crew protection and combat operations. The tank's movements were also noted for being surprisingly stealthy, adding to its enigmatic and somewhat intimidating aura. Questions immediately began to circulate. What advanced systems were housed within its heavily sloped armor? What new capabilities did this steel behemoth bring to the modern battlefield? Speculation ran rampant, fueling both excitement and concern. The T-14 Armata, from its very first appearance, was positioned as far more than a mere piece of military hardware. It was carefully curated to be a potent symbol, a symbol of Russia's soaring ambition to reclaim a leading position in the development and deployment of advanced armored warfare technology. It carried the heavy burden of expectation, promising to reshape the dynamics of land-based combat. However, such grand promises, especially those showcased with theatrical flair on parade grounds, often face the harsh realities of development, production, and deployment. The remarkable journey of the T-14 Armata was only just beginning, its path shrouded in both promise and uncertainty. The T-14 Armata was vigorously promoted as the vanguard of a new epoch in military ground systems. This was not to be another evolution of the long lineage of Soviet-era tanks, familiar from the Cold War. Instead, it represented a fundamental reimagining conceived from the ground up. Its entire architecture was meticulously designed to meet the intricate demands of the 21st century digital battlefield. The Armata was envisioned as a network-centric warfare platform, capable of operating seamlessly within a larger, interconnected combat ecosystem. It was built to process vast amounts of data, enhancing situational awareness and decision-making speed for its crew. This was Russia's answer to the future of war. A core philosophical shift underpinning the Armada's design was an unprecedented emphasis on crew survivability. This marked a significant departure for Russian tank design, which historically sometimes prioritized firepower or mass production. The T-14 featured a heavily armored crew capsule, strategically located at the front of the hull. This capsule was completely isolated from the unmanned turret and the main armament's ammunition storage. This innovative layout promised to shield the three-person crew even if the tank sustained catastrophic hits to its turret or fighting compartment. Protecting the highly trained soldiers within became a paramount design objective, reflecting modern warfare's realities. Beyond its revolutionary defensive features, the Armata was engineered to boast truly cutting-edge offensive capabilities. It was to be equipped with a new generation 125mm smoothbore cannon, the two A-82-1M, reportedly capable of firing more powerful rounds than its predecessors. Furthermore, advanced sensor suites and integrated digital fire control systems were intended to give it a decisive edge. The tank was designed to detect and engage targets at greater ranges, to see first, shoot first, and achieve a higher probability of a first-round kill. It was also meant to integrate seamlessly with reconnaissance drones and other battlefield assets, creating a unified combat network for enhanced lethality. Russian officials and state media made bold assertions about the T-14's superiority. they claimed it would render existing Western main battle tanks, such as the American M1 Abrams and the German Leopard 2, effectively obsolete. The Armada was positioned as the spearhead of a comprehensively modernized Russian ground forces. It was intended to be a force multiplier, a key instrument for projecting national power and decisively challenging the military technological dominance of NATO and other global players. The expectations set for the T-14 Armata were truly monumental, painting it as an undisputed king of the future battlefield, a game-changer of historic proportions. Yet nearly a decade has now elapsed since that highly publicized and impressive debut on Red Square. As of 2024, the narrative surrounding the T-14 Armata has undergone a significant transformation. The initial wave of unadulterated awe has largely receded, replaced by a persistent and growing tide of skepticism. The tank, once hailed as an unstoppable force, remains more of an enigma, a specter, than an established and verifiable presence on global battlefields. Its formidable shadow looms large in discussions of military technology, but its actual substance, its proven capabilities, and its production numbers are increasingly questioned by international observers and defense experts. What truly became of this proclaimed supertank, the machine that was confidently slated to revolutionize the very nature of armored warfare? The initial ambitious projections for mass production, suggesting thousands of units entering service by the early 2020s, have demonstrably failed to materialize. Instead, concrete information about its deployment is scarce. Official statements are often optimistic but vague, while unofficial reports are frequently contradictory, painting a confusing picture. The actual number of operational T-14s remains a subject of intense debate, with estimates varying wildly. The anticipated flood of armadas into Russian tank regiments has simply not occurred. The central question therefore persists and intensifies with each passing year. Is the T-14 Armata a genuine game-changing technological marvel, currently navigating temporary but surmountable setbacks in its development and production cycle? Or alternatively, is it destined to become a cautionary tale of national ambition exceeding practical capability? Could it be a potent symbol of a nation's strategic reach extending perilously beyond its economic and industrial grasp, particularly when confronted with international sanctions, complex technological dependencies, and immense financial pressures? The answers remain elusive, obscured by a fog of official secrecy and competing narratives. This essay will embark on a thorough exploration of the complex story of the T-14 Armata. We will meticulously delve into its conceptual origins, tracing its development from drawing board to parade ground. We will analyze its sophisticated design features and the revolutionary claims made for its performance. Critically, we will also investigate the significant challenges, the persistent controversies, and its conspicuous, almost complete absence from major military conflicts where its capabilities might have been decisively tested. This is the unfolding narrative of arguably the most advanced main battle tank that, to this day, has never truly been committed to the crucible of war. To truly comprehend the T-14 Armata, one must first journey back in time. We must travel to the vast, unforgiving battlefields of the Second World War. It was here, amidst the brutal struggle on the Eastern Front, that the foundational principles of Russian armor philosophy were forged in fire and steel. These principles, born out of desperate necessity and harsh experience, would echo through Soviet tank design for generations. The war demanded vehicles that could be built quickly, endure immense punishment, and operate effectively in the hands of rapidly trained crews. This brutal crucible shaped a unique approach to armored warfare, one that prioritized practicality over perfection and numbers over niche capabilities. The quintessential embodiment of this emerging doctrine was the T-34 medium tank. When it first appeared, the T-34 shocked its German adversaries with its revolutionary sloped armor, offering superior ballistic protection. Its wide tracks allowed for excellent mobility across the muddy and snowy Russian terrain, a critical advantage. The powerful diesel engine was less prone to catching fire than gasoline engines of the era, and its 76mm main gun was formidable. The T-34 was not necessarily the most sophisticated tank of its time, nor was it without its flaws, such as a cramped two-man turret and rudimentary crew ergonomics. However, its overall design represented a brilliant balance of firepower, protection, and mobility. The impact of the T-34 on the outcome of the war on the Eastern Front cannot be overstated. While individual German tanks like the Panther and Tiger might have been superior in certain technical aspects, they were complex, expensive, and produced in relatively small numbers. The Soviet Union, by contrast, leveraged its immense industrial capacity to churn out T-34s by the tens of thousands. This sheer weight of numbers, combined with the tank's inherent ruggedness and battlefield effectiveness, eventually overwhelmed the Wehrmacht's panzer divisions. The T-34 became a symbol of Soviet resilience and industrial might, a war-winning weapon that validated the design philosophy of simplicity and mass production for the Red Army. This wartime experience deeply ingrained a specific set of priorities into Soviet tank design. Ruggedness, reliability in extreme weather conditions, ease of mass production, and operational simplicity became the hallmarks. While crew survivability was a concern, it was often balanced against the imperative to field vast numbers of tanks. The idea that quantity has a quality all its own became a central tenet. This legacy, born from the triumph of the T-34, would cast a long shadow, profoundly influencing the development of every Soviet and Russian main battle tank that followed, right up to the conceptualization of the T-14 Armata itself, which sought to both honor and transcend this formidable heritage. Section 2, Cold War Steel-Tied Mass Might and the Soviet Tank Armadas. As the embers of World War II cooled, a new global confrontation emerged, the Cold War. The ideological and geopolitical struggle between the Soviet Union and the NATO alliance dominated the international landscape for decades. In this tense environment, armored forces became a central element of military power and deterrence. For the Soviet Union, the lessons learned from the Eastern Front, particularly the success of mass tank formations, heavily influenced its post-war military doctrine. The perceived threat from the West spurred an unprecedented arms race, with both sides investing heavily in developing and deploying increasingly advanced main battle tanks. The Soviet response was characteristically robust, focusing on vast numbers. The T-54 and its successor, the T-55, became the definitive symbols of Soviet armored might during the early and middle Cold War periods. These tanks were, in many ways, direct descendants of the T-34's core philosophy. They were relatively simple in design, incredibly rugged and, crucially, easy to manufacture in enormous quantities. Estimates suggest that over 100,000 T-54, T-55 series tanks were produced, making them the most produced tank in history. They were exported widely to Soviet client states across the globe, becoming a ubiquitous presence in numerous regional conflicts. Their low silhouette, powerful 100mm gun, and decent armor protection made them a formidable opponent for their Western contemporaries for many years. Following the T-54, T-55, the T-62 main battle tank entered service in the early 1960s. It represented an incremental evolution rather than a radical departure. The T-62 was the first tank in the world to be armed with a smoothbore cannon, the 115mm U-5TS, capable of firing advanced armor-piercing, fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds. This provided a significant boost in anti-tank capability. However, it retained many of the design characteristics of its predecessors, including a compact profile, a focus on mechanical simplicity, and an emphasis on mass production. The Soviet military continued to believe that overwhelming numerical superiority in tanks was a key to victory on the potential European battlefield. This doctrine of deep battle envisioned massive Soviet tank armies, spearheaded by thousands of vehicles like the T-55 and T-62, punching through NATO defenses and rapidly advancing deep into Western Europe. The design of these tanks directly supported this operational concept. They were built to be reliable enough for sustained offensive operations, simple enough for conscript crews to maintain in harsh field conditions, and numerous enough to absorb combat losses while still achieving strategic objectives. This enduring philosophy shaped Soviet tank development for decades, creating a legacy of powerful, if sometimes unsophisticated, armored fighting vehicles that defined an entire era of military standoff. Section 3. The Late Soviet Armor Evolution Innovation Meets Tradition. As the Cold War progressed into its later stages, the technological competition between East and West intensified significantly. NATO countries began fielding increasingly sophisticated main battle tanks, such as the American M60 series, the British Chieftain, and the German Leopard 1. These Western designs often featured more advanced armor, superior fire control systems, and greater crew comfort. In response, Soviet tank designers recognized the need to move beyond mere incremental upgrades of existing platforms. This led to a new wave of innovation, resulting in a triad of more advanced and in some cases quite revolutionary Soviet tanks that would come to define the armored forces of the late Cold War. The T-64 was arguably the most groundbreaking of this new generation. Introduced in the mid-1960s, it was a radical departure in many respects. It featured an autoloader for its 125mm main gun, which reduced the crew size to 3 and allowed for a smaller, more compact turret. The T-64 was also one of the first tanks in the world to incorporate advanced composite armor, significantly enhancing its protection against contemporary anti-tank weapons. However, these innovations came at a price. The T-64 was complex, expensive to produce, and initially suffered from reliability issues with its novel engine and autoloader systems. It was primarily deployed with elite Soviet formations. To complement the high-tech T-64, the Soviet military sought a more cost-effective and reliable main battle tank suitable for mass production and widespread deployment. This led to the development of the T-72, which entered service in the early 1970s. While the T-72 incorporated some of the advanced features pioneered by the T-64, such as the 125mm smoothbore gun and an autoloader, it was a simpler and more robust design overall. The T-72 became the workhorse of the Soviet Army and was widely exported, serving in numerous conflicts around the world. Later, the T-80 emerged, distinctive for its powerful gas turbine engine, offering excellent speed and mobility, though at the cost of higher fuel consumption and mechanical complexity. This period demonstrated a fascinating interplay between the drive for technological advancement and the enduring Soviet adherence to core principles of practicality and mass production. Design bureaus like those at Kharkov, responsible for the T-64 and T-80UD, and Nizhny Tagil, responsible for the T-72 and T-90, often pursued different paths, leading to a diverse, if sometimes logistically challenging tank fleet. While these late Soviet tanks boasted significant improvements in firepower, protection, and mobility, they still largely retained the characteristic low silhouette, emphasis on offensive capability, and a design philosophy that accepted certain trade-offs in crew comfort and survivability compared to their Western counterparts, a balance that would be re-evaluated in the years to come. Section 4, A New Century's Challenge, Paving the Path to Armada. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 led to severe economic constraints and political instability, drastically cutting defense spending. The T-90 main battle tank emerged in the early 1990s as a modernized version of the T-72B, incorporating advanced features like new explosive reactive armor and an enhanced fire control system. The First Gulf War in 1991 highlighted the technological gap between Western armored vehicles and Soviet-era tanks. The rise of network-centric operations and advanced battlefield surveillance systems posed new threats to traditional tank designs. Russian defense planners recognized the need for a clean-sheet design to secure a technological edge. This strategic realization laid the groundwork for Object 148, the program that would give birth to the T-14 Armata. The T-14 was envisioned to break from past constraints and redefine Russian armor for a new era. Project 148, a new dawn for Russian armor. The dawn of the 21st century found Russia at a critical juncture in its military technology. Tanks like the T-72 and T-90 had served faithfully, but faced new vulnerabilities in evolving global conflicts. Russian military thinkers understood that mere evolution of existing platforms would no longer suffice. In the early 2000s, the Russian Ministry of Defense initiated the highly classified Object 148 program. This program aimed to develop a main battle tank that would decisively leapfrog existing Western designs. The designers at Ural Vagonzavod were tasked with reinventing the main battle tank, focusing on crew survivability, network-centric capabilities, and advanced sensor fusion. The ultimate goal was to create a vehicle that could dominate future battlefields. Object 148 was more than just a response to external threats. It was an assertion of Russia's intent to remain a premier power in armored vehicle technology. The T-14 Armata began to take shape, born from a desire to redefine the concept of a main battle tank. The development of the T-14 Armata was anchored by a fundamental principle: a complete break from past design limitations. Russian engineers recognized that simply modifying existing T-series tanks would not achieve the transformative leap required. The Armata program sought to recalibrate the balance between offensive firepower and crew survivability. The new design placed the safety and operational effectiveness of the crew at its core. The Armata was conceived as a universal combat platform, a modular approach envisioning a common heavy-tracked chassis for various armored vehicles. This commitment to a clean-slate design required new engineering solutions and advanced materials. The ambition was to create a platform superior to current adversaries and adaptable to future challenges. The T-14 Armata was intended to be the flagship of this new vision, a testament to Russia's revitalized technological prowess. At the heart of the T-14 Armata's design lies its most striking feature: an entirely unmanned, remotely operated turret. By removing the crew from the turret, Russian designers aimed to enhance crew survivability. The turret is often the most targeted part of a tank. An unmanned design meant that even a catastrophic hit would not necessarily result in crew casualties. Complementing the unmanned turret was a heavily armored crew capsule, or Citadel, located at the front of the hull. This isolated compartment housed all three crew members, protected by thick layers of multi-component armor. The separation of crew, armament, and ammunition storage was a pivotal design choice, reflecting a commitment to maximizing crew survival. The Armada's layout allowed for a potentially more compact turret design, contributing to a reduced overall vehicle silhouette and weight. The unmanned turret and isolated crew Citadel represented a new philosophy of armored warfare, linking technology and survivability in the pursuit of battlefield superiority. Section 4. Forging Dominance, Advanced Protection and Future Ambitions. The T-14 Armata was engineered with a multi-layered defensive shield, including advanced passive armor and Malachite explosive reactive armor. The Afghanit Active Protection System, APS, was designed to detect and intercept incoming projectiles. The Afghanit system possessed both soft-kill capabilities like jamming missile guidance systems and hard-kill interceptors capable of destroying threats. The integration of stealth characteristics aimed to decrease its detectability and targeting vulnerability. The T-14 Armata emerged as a bold statement of Russia's technological ambitions in the 21st century. It was conceived to overwhelm adversaries through superior protection, advanced sensors, potent firepower, and network-centric capabilities. The T-14 was intended to redefine the parameters of armored warfare, securing Russia's place at the forefront of military innovation. Section 1. The Unmanned Turret, a paradigm shift in tank design. The T-14 Armata's unmanned turret is a radical departure from traditional tank design. For nearly a century, main battle tanks have carried their primary armament within a crude turret structure. The Armata shatters this long-standing convention with its automated, remotely operated weapon station. The decision to remove human crew from the turret drastically reduces direct crew exposure to enemy fire. Operating the unmanned turret relies on an advanced suite of digital technologies, with the gunner and commander controlling all functions remotely. The technological complexity of such a system represents a significant engineering challenge. The Armada's turret is a window into a possible future, potentially influencing how other nations develop their next-generation armored fighting vehicles. Section 2. The Crew Citadel, Survival as a Prime Directive. The T-14 Armada's focus on crew protection takes another significant step forward with the design of its crew capsule. Often referred to as an armored citadel, this compartment is strategically located at the very front of the tank's hull. It is here that all three crew members, the commander, the gunner, and the driver, are seated side by side. This arrangement is a distinct feature, different from the tandem or offset seating found in many other tanks. The primary purpose of this heavily fortified capsule is unambiguous: to maximize the survivability of the crew under the harshest combat conditions, even if the tank itself sustains critical damage. This crew citadel is engineered as a self-contained, highly protected shell. It is constructed from multiple layers of advanced composite armor, designed to withstand impacts from high-caliber rounds and the blast effects of nearby explosions. Critically, the capsule is physically isolated from the unmanned turret, the main gun's ammunition storage, and the vehicle's fuel tanks. This separation is key to preventing a catastrophic kill of the crew in the event of an ammunition cook-off, a common cause of tank destruction, or an internal fire. By compartmentalizing these elements, the Armada designers aim to create a sanctuary for the crew, allowing them to potentially survive incidents that would be fatal in older tank designs. In theory, the protection offered by this citadel is substantial. Russian designers have claimed that the crew could survive even a direct hit on the turret or a major internal explosion in the fighting compartment. This level of protection would represent a significant improvement in crew survivability statistics on the battlefield. Beyond the physical protection, such a design could also have a positive psychological impact on the crew. Knowing they are situated in one of the most secure parts of the vehicle might enhance their confidence and operational effectiveness, particularly during high-intensity engagements. The T-14 endeavors to keep its human operators alive to fight another day. The Armada's crew citadel concept contrasts sharply with traditional tank layouts where crew members are often dispersed, with some in the turret and some in the hull, and often in closer proximity to ammunition. This Russian approach signifies a clear prioritization of its highly trained human assets, reflecting a modern understanding of the value of experienced soldiers. As warfare becomes increasingly technologically complex, the skill and decision-making capabilities of the crew are paramount. The T-14 Armata's design therefore places an unprecedented emphasis on ensuring these personnel can operate effectively and, above all, survive the rigors of the contemporary battlefield. Section 3. Arsenal of the Future: Firepower and Engagement Systems. The primary instrument of the T-14 Armata's offensive power is its advanced main armament, the 125mm 2A-82-1M smoothbore cannon. This gun represents a significant upgrade over previous generations of Russian tank cannons, such as those found on the T-72 and T-90 series. The 2A-82-1M is reported to have higher muzzle energy and greater accuracy, allowing it to fire more potent kinetic energy penetrators and other advanced munitions with increased velocity and precision. This enhanced performance is crucial for defeating the thick, sophisticated armor found on modern Western main battle tanks. The cannon is, naturally, fully stabilized, enabling accurate fire-on-the-move capabilities. Feeding this powerful cannon is an automated loading system, a feature common in Russian tank design since the T-64. The autoloader allows for a consistent rate of fire and reduces the crew complement to 3. The Armada can reportedly fire a variety of ammunition types. These include new generations of armor-piercing, fin-stabilized discarding sabot rounds for engaging heavily armored targets, high-explosive anti-tank rounds, and high-explosive fragmentation shells for use against softer targets and infantry. Furthermore, the 2A-82-1M cannon is capable of launching laser beam-riding anti-tank guided missiles through its barrel, enabling engagement of enemy armor or even low-flying helicopters at extended ranges well beyond that of conventional tank gunnery. Intriguing speculation has long surrounded the potential for an even larger main gun for the T-14 platform. Reports have repeatedly surfaced, suggesting that a future variant of the Armada could be upgunned with a massive 152mm cannon, designated the 2A-83. Such a weapon would represent a colossal increase in firepower, potentially capable of firing devastatingly powerful rounds capable of overwhelming any known tank armor or field fortification. While the deployment of a 152mm gun remains unconfirmed and presents significant engineering challenges, including ammunition capacity and recoil management, the mere prospect underscores Russia's ambition for the Armada to achieve undisputed battlefield dominance through superior firepower. Supporting the main cannon, The T-14 Armata is equipped with potent secondary armament systems, all remotely operated. Typically this includes a 12.7mm Cord heavy machine gun, effective against light armored vehicles, infantry and low-flying aerial threats. Alongside this, a 7.62mm PKTM coaxial machine gun provides suppressive fire and engagement capability against softer targets. Both these weapon systems are integrated into a remote weapon station, controlled by the crew from within their protected capsule. This comprehensive suite of armaments ensures the T-14 can effectively engage a wide spectrum of threats encountered on the modern battlefield, from main battle tanks to dismounted infantry. Section 4. Guardian Technologies Armor, Protection and Mobility. The T-14 Armata's survivability is not solely reliant on its unmanned turret and crew Citadel. It incorporates a comprehensive, multi-layered protection scheme. The foundation of this defensive capability is its advanced passive armor. This is believed to be a new generation of steel composite armor, engineered for enhanced resistance against both kinetic energy penetrators and shaped charge warheads. This base armor is further augmented by the Malekith Dual Explosive Reactive Armor System. Malekith ERA modules are designed to defeat modern tandem charge anti-tank missiles and to degrade the effectiveness of long-rod APFSDS projectiles, providing a crucial reactive defense layer across the tank's frontal arc and other vulnerable areas. A key element in the Armada's defensive suite is the Afghanet Active Protection System. This sophisticated system is designed to detect and neutralize incoming anti-tank threats before they strike the vehicle. The Afghanet APS reportedly includes both soft kill and hard kill components. Soft kill measures can involve multi-spectral smoke screens to obscure the tank from laser designators and missile guidance systems, as well as electronic countermeasures. The hard kill element employs radar arrays to detect incoming projectiles and then launches small interceptor munitions to physically destroy them at a safe distance from the tank. A fully functional and reliable APS like Afghanet would dramatically increase the T-14's chances of survival against prevalent anti-tank guided missiles and rocket-propelled grenades. Beyond its physical armor and active protection, the T-14 Armata incorporates elements of stealth technology to reduce its battlefield signature. Its distinctive angular shaping is not merely aesthetic, it is designed to reduce its radar cross-section, making it more difficult to detect and track by enemy radar systems. Special radar-absorbent materials and coatings may also be employed. Furthermore, attention has reportedly been paid to managing the tank's thermal signature, making it less conspicuous to enemy infrared sensors. These stealth features aim to enhance the Armada's survivability by decreasing the probability of detection and successful targeting in the first place, giving it an initial advantage in any engagement. Providing the T-14 Armata with the necessary agility and speed is a powerful new generation diesel engine. It is widely reported to be the A853A, also known as 12N360, X-type 12-cylinder turbocharged diesel engine, capable of producing up to 1,500 horsepower in its standard configuration, with potential for higher output. This substantial power plant is expected to give the approximately 50 to 55-ton tank a good power-to-weight ratio, enabling a top road speed of around 75 to 80 kilometers per hour and good cross-country mobility. Its operational range is estimated to be approximately 500 kilometers, allowing for sustained battlefield operations without frequent refueling, a critical factor for modern mechanized warfare. Section 1. The Grand Debut and a Stuttering Start. The date was May 9, 2015. Moscow's Red Square was the grand stage for the annual Victory Day parade. This event is always a major showcase for Russian military might, a projection of strength to both domestic and international audiences. On this particular occasion, anticipation was exceptionally high. Amidst the columns of familiar tanks and missile launchers, a new silhouette was set to make its global debut. Russia was ready to unveil its crown jewel, the T-14 Armata. This tank was not just an upgrade, it was heralded as a revolutionary leap in armored warfare, a true next-generation machine ready to dominate future battlefields. The world watched, cameras ready. Then, in a moment laden with unintended symbolism, the unexpected happened. As one of the brand new T-14 Armadas rolled towards the historic Lenin's tomb, its engine sputtered and the mighty tank ground to an ignominious halt. Right there in the full glare of the world's media, the supertank was immobile. For a few tense minutes, the parade's meticulous choreography was disrupted. This was not the display of flawless power Russia had intended. The image of the stalled Armada, with a recovery vehicle later attempting to tow it, quickly flashed across news screens globally. It was a deeply embarrassing moment for the Kremlin and the Russian military-industrial complex. Official Russian sources moved swiftly to manage the fallout from this very public mishap. State media outlets and military spokespersons downplayed the incident. They variously described it as a minor technical glitch, a problem caused by an inexperienced driver, or even somewhat implausibly, a pre-planned rehearsal of evacuation procedures. The tank, it was asserted, was simply too advanced, and the crew was still learning its intricacies. These explanations, however, were met with considerable skepticism by many international observers and defense analysts. The narrative of teething problems was understandable, but the timing and location of the failure were particularly damaging to the T-14's carefully crafted image of invincibility. The Red Square stall immediately gave ammunition to critics. Whispers and outright accusations that the T-14 Armata was merely a Potemkin tank began to circulate widely. This term refers to the apocryphal story of Grigory Potemkin constructing fake, impressive-looking villages to impress Empress Catherine II. Was the Armada, with all its advanced claims, more for show than for actual battlefield deployment? This single incident, occurring at the very moment of its grand unveiling, cast a long and persistent shadow of doubt over the entire program. It raised fundamental questions about the tank's reliability and readiness from its first public appearance, questions that would continue to linger. The embarrassing stall on Red Square was more than just a fleeting public relations disaster. For many defense analysts, it served as a visible indicator of potentially deeper, more systemic problems plaguing the T-14 Armata program. While any new complex military hardware can experience initial teething issues, the whispers that began to emanate from Russian defense circles and international intelligence communities suggested challenges far beyond simple operational hiccups. These were not just minor bugs to be ironed out. They hinted at fundamental difficulties in bringing such an ambitious design from the drawing board to full-scale, reliable production. The sleek parade vehicle might be concealing a host of unseen complications. Persistent reports started to emerge detailing significant hurdles in the manufacturing process. The T-14 Armata, with its unmanned turret, sophisticated sensor suites, and advanced active protection systems, relied heavily on cutting-edge components. Sourcing or domestically producing these high-technology elements, particularly complex electronics, high-grade optics, and reliable microprocessors, proved to be a considerable challenge for Russia's industrial base. There were suggestions that the very ambition of the design, its leapfrog approach, was outpacing the practical capabilities of its manufacturing sector, especially as geopolitical tensions began to affect supply chains for certain critical imported subsystems. Alongside production difficulties, the issue of cost overruns quickly became a prominent concern. The T-14 Armata was not a cheap tank to begin with, given its revolutionary design and advanced technology. As development and manufacturing challenges mounted, the per-unit cost reportedly began to escalate significantly. Original projections for procuring thousands of these tanks started to appear increasingly optimistic, if not entirely unfeasible, within the constraints of Russia's defense budget. The Kremlin faced a difficult choice: either massively increase spending or drastically scale back its acquisition plans for the new super tank. This financial pressure added another layer of uncertainty to the Armada's future. These intertwined issues of production bottlenecks and soaring costs inevitably led to serious questions about the T-14's overall reliability. If the tank was proving difficult and expensive to build, were corners being cut in quality control? If even parade models experienced failures, how would the tank perform under the sustained stress and harsh conditions of actual combat operations? The initial promise of a technologically superior and dependable fighting machine began to erode under the weight of these troubling reports. The narrative shifted from one of assured dominance to one marked by doubt and concern over whether the Armada could truly deliver on its formidable on-paper specifications. As the years rolled on from that memorable 2015 debut, the T-14 Armata remained an elusive presence. The initial flurry of excitement and detailed technical discussions gave way to a prolonged period of ambiguity concerning its actual operational status. The most pressing question that emerged, and one that continues to be debated, was starkly simple. How many T-14 Armadas had Russia actually managed to build and integrate into its active military forces? This seemingly straightforward query became a complex puzzle, with clear, verifiable answers proving remarkably difficult to obtain. The tank existed, it had been seen, but its numbers were a mystery. Official pronouncements from Russian military figures and state-controlled media regarding T-14 production figures were often infrequent and at times, seemingly inconsistent. Initial ambitious targets for delivering over 2,000 tanks by 2020 were quietly revised, then revised again. Announcements of small batches undergoing state trials or experimental combat deployment would surface periodically, but these rarely translated into evidence of large-scale serial production. This general lack of transparency did little to dispel the growing skepticism among international observers, who noted a significant gap between the early rhetoric and the observable reality of the Armada's deployment. In stark contrast, Western intelligence agencies, independent defense analysts, and specialized military publications consistently offered much more conservative estimates of the T-14's actual production numbers. These assessments, often based on satellite imagery of manufacturing plants like Ural Vagonzavod, analysis of military unit deployments and Russian state procurement data, generally suggested that only a very small number of armadas had been completed. Some analysts believe the total might be limited to a few dozen pre-production or initial production models, primarily used for testing, training, and further development, rather than constituting a truly operational combat force. This significant discrepancy between proclaimed ambition and estimated reality fostered an image of the T-14 Armata as something of a mythical beast, a powerful symbol showcased for its propaganda value but largely a phantom on the actual military order of battle. It was a tank that generated headlines and discussions far exceeding its apparent numerical strength. The Armada's true production status and its overall combat readiness remained shrouded in a thick fog of speculation and official ambiguity. The world still waited for a definitive demonstration of its capabilities, a real-world test that would either validate Russia's claims or confirm the prevailing skepticism about this costly gamble. When Russian forces launched their full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the world watched with bated breath. Military analysts, defense enthusiasts, and strategic planners across the globe turned their attention to the vast columns of armor crossing the border. A key question loomed large in many minds: where was the T-14 Armata? This was, after all, Russia's much-vaunted next-generation main battle tank. It had been paraded as a symbol of rejuvenated Russian military might. Its advanced technology, particularly its crew survivability features and sophisticated sensors, was supposedly tailor-made for the challenges of modern, high-intensity warfare. The expectation was clear: the Armata would surely spearhead the assault. For years, the T-14 had been presented as the pinnacle of Russian armored engineering. It was the tank designed to outperform and outlast its Western counterparts. Commentators had extensively discussed its unmanned turret, its isolated crew capsule, and its potential active protection systems. Given these revolutionary attributes, its deployment in a major conventional conflict seemed not just likely, but almost inevitable. Many anticipated that the Armata would provide Russia with a decisive technological edge, showcasing its superiority on the 21st century battlefield. The initial phases of the invasion were seen as the perfect proving ground for this formidable machine, a real-world test of its proclaimed capabilities after years of speculation. The symbolic importance of the T-14's presence could not be overstated. Its deployment would have sent a powerful message about Russia's commitment to the conflict and its confidence in its most advanced military hardware. Seeing Armadas leading armored thrusts would have been a significant psychological blow to Ukrainian defenders, and a stark warning to NATO. However, as the initial days and weeks of the invasion unfolded, a curious silence surrounded the T-14. While older tanks like the T-72, T-80, and even some T-90 variants were extensively documented in combat, the Armata was conspicuously absent from the front lines. This glaring omission began to raise immediate questions. as the conflict intensified and Russian armored losses mounted, the absence of the T-14 became even more perplexing. If this tank was truly the game-changer it was claimed to be, why was it not being utilized when it was most needed? The initial expectations of seeing Armadas dominate Ukrainian highways and cityscapes quickly faded. They were replaced by a growing sense of puzzlement and a barrage of inquiries from observers worldwide. The Armada, the pride of Russia's ground forces, remained a phantom. This mystery deepened with each passing day, fueling speculation about the true state of Russia's premier tank program and its readiness for actual war. The continued and conspicuous absence of the T-14 Armata from active combat zones in Ukraine throughout much of 2022 only served to amplify the existing doubts. Speculation ran rampant across military forums and within intelligence communities. Was the tank simply not ready for the rigors of a real war? Were the production numbers so critically low that Russia could not afford to field even a small symbolic contingent? Or perhaps, were there undisclosed technical deficiencies that made its deployment too risky? The Kremlin remained largely silent on the matter, offering no clear explanations for why its most advanced tank was missing in action during its most significant military operation in decades. It was not until many months into the conflict, well into 2023, that the first tentative reports and fleeting images suggesting the T-14's presence in or near Ukraine began to surface. These were often grainy, unverified social media posts or brief mentions in Russian state media. Some videos purported to show T-14s being transported on flatbed trucks or operating in areas far from the intense fighting at the front. These appearances were sporadic and lacked independent verification, often dismissed by Western analysts as carefully managed propaganda efforts, rather than evidence of genuine widespread combat deployment. The super tanks seemed to haunt the periphery, never quite materializing in a decisive role. When Russian sources did acknowledge the T-14's presence in the Special Military Operations Zone, they often qualified its role. Reports suggested that the tanks were being used primarily for indirect fire support from rear positions, or for testing in combat conditions, rather than leading direct assaults. This purported employment pattern was puzzling. A technologically sophisticated main battle tank, designed for direct engagement and breakthrough operations, being relegated to roles far from the front lines, seemed a peculiar use of such an expensive and supposedly capable asset. It suggested a profound reluctance to expose the Armada to the full spectrum of threats present in the Ukrainian theater. This cautious, limited, and often unconfirmed deployment stood in stark contrast to the Armada's pre-war billing as an invincible battlefield titan. The narrative of a revolutionary weapon system was clashing harshly with the reality of its apparent non-use or highly restricted use in critical offensive operations. If the T-14 was indeed as superior as claimed, its absence from the vanguard of Russian assaults was a telling statement. It raised fundamental questions about its actual battlefield effectiveness, its reliability under combat stress, and the overall confidence of the Russian military command in its flagship armored platform. The ghost on the battlefield remained an enigma. One compelling explanation for the T-14 Armada's notable absence from the front lines, or its very limited deployment, lies in the exceptionally lethal anti-tank environment that Ukraine rapidly became. The Ukrainian military, heavily supplied by Western allies, was armed with a formidable array of modern anti-tank guided missiles. Weapons like the American FGM-148 Javelin, the British-Swedish NLAW, and Ukraine's indigenous Stugna P became ubiquitous. These systems, particularly those capable of top attack profiles, posed a severe threat to even heavily armored vehicles. The battlefield was saturated with these tank killers, turning armored advances into perilous endeavors for Russian forces. The proliferation of these advanced ATGMs, alongside armed drones like the Turkish Bayraktar TB2 and smaller, loitering munitions, created a nightmarish scenario for any tank crew. Even the T-14 Armata, with its vaunted Afghanit active protection system and advanced armor, would face unprecedented challenges. While the Afghanit APS was designed to intercept incoming threats, its effectiveness against a diverse and numerous array of sophisticated missiles employed with well-honed tactics remained unproven in large-scale combat. Russian military planners would have been acutely aware that the Ukrainian battlefield was a crucible capable of testing any defensive system to its absolute limits, and perhaps beyond. The stakes for Russia in deploying the T-14 Armata were incredibly high. If one of these supertanks were to be definitively destroyed, or even worse, captured by Ukrainian forces, the propaganda implications would be devastating. The loss of an armada would not only be a tactical setback but also a massive symbolic blow to Russia's military prestige and its arms export ambitions. The image of a burning T-14, or one being paraded by Ukrainian troops, would instantly undermine years of marketing and claims of technological superiority. This potential for a high-profile failure likely weighed heavily on the minds of Russian commanders, fostering extreme risk aversion. Ultimately, Russia's apparent reluctance to commit the T-14 Armata to the forefront of the war in Ukraine speaks volumes. It could indicate a lack of confidence in the tank's ability to survive in such a high-threat environment, despite its advanced design features. Alternatively, it might reflect the reality of extremely low production numbers, making each unit too precious an asset to risk in direct combat operations where losses were probable. Whatever the precise reasons, the decision to largely withhold its premier tank from its most significant conflict in generations suggests that the gamble of deployment was deemed greater than the potential reward, raising profound questions about the Armada's true readiness and its future. The initial vision for the T-14 Armata was undeniably grand, painted with bold strokes of ambition. Russian military planners and state pronouncements forecasted a veritable flood of these next-generation tanks. Original projections, often repeated with confidence, spoke of acquiring as many as 2,300 Armadas by the early 2020s, specifically by 2020 or 2025. This was not a mere upgrade program. It was intended as a comprehensive re-equipping of Russia's elite armored formations. The Kremlin aimed to showcase a decisive technological leap, replacing older Soviet-era designs with a fleet of seemingly invincible machines ready to redefine land warfare. This dream was powerfully projected. However, as the years ticked by following its 2015 parade debut, a starkly different reality began to emerge. The projected timeline of 2020 arrived, and then it swiftly passed into memory. The anticipated armada of thousands of T-14s failed to materialize on Russia's military bases or its parade grounds. Instead of a torrent, there was barely a trickle. Reports indicated that only a very small number, perhaps a few dozen at most, had been produced. This chasm between the ambitious initial promises and the sobering production figures grew wider and more conspicuous with each passing year, fueling a rising tide of international skepticism and critical inquiry. Even before the full weight of international sanctions took hold, subtle yet persistent warning signs of trouble were apparent. The T-14 Armata was, by any measure, an extraordinarily complex endeavor. Its design incorporated a multitude of cutting-edge, often unproven technologies. Integrating these disparate systems, the unmanned turret, the advanced sensors, the active protection suite, into a single reliable platform was a monumental engineering task. Early whispers from within the Russian defense industry hinted at significant difficulties in achieving seamless system integration and overcoming unforeseen technical hurdles. The sheer challenge of mass-producing such a sophisticated vehicle was perhaps significantly underestimated from the very beginning. The dream of a rapid, large-scale deployment of the Armada gradually transformed into a protracted and arduous ordeal. What was envisioned as a triumphant march of technological prowess became a slow crawl, marked by repeated delays and consistently downscaled production estimates. The term production nightmare started to appear increasingly appropriate to describe the situation. The program's immense ambition seemed to collide head-on with the inherent limitations and practicalities of Russia's contemporary industrial and technological base. These internal challenges were significant even before external pressures began to severely exacerbate the situation, setting the stage for further complications. The geopolitical landscape shifted dramatically following Russia's actions in Ukraine, beginning in 2014 and escalating significantly thereafter. A comprehensive regime of international sanctions was imposed by Western nations and their allies. These measures were specifically designed to target key sectors of the Russian economy, with a particular focus on its defense industry and its access to advanced technology. The T-14 Armata program, heavily reliant on sophisticated components that were often designed or manufactured in the West, found itself squarely in the path of this economic onslaught. The flow of critical parts began to dry up, creating an immediate and severe crisis for the tank's production. The Armada's advanced capabilities were predicated on the successful integration of numerous high-technology subsystems. Essential elements included high-resolution thermal imaging systems for its gunner and commander sites, crucial for all-weather day-night operations. Sophisticated microelectronics, processors, and specialized sensors were fundamental to its digital architecture, fire control systems, and the Afghanit Active Protection System. Many of these vital components, or the underlying technology to produce them, were originally sourced from Western European countries or other technologically advanced nations, now part of the Sanctions coalition. The sudden severing of these supply lines created critical, almost insurmountable bottlenecks for Uralvagonzavod, the primary manufacturer. In response to these crippling restrictions, Russia intensified its efforts towards import substitution. The strategic aim was to develop domestic alternatives for the now unavailable foreign components. This was a laudable goal for national self-sufficiency, but it proved to be an exceptionally challenging and time-consuming endeavor. Replicating the precise performance characteristics, reliability, and miniaturization of cutting-edge Western electronics, optics, and specialized alloys was a monumental task. For many niche, high-performance items, Russia's domestic industrial base simply lacked the pre-existing capacity, specialized tooling, or deep institutional expertise to rapidly develop and mass-produce truly equivalent substitutes, leading to inevitable and lengthy delays. These profound supply chain disruptions and the slow progress of import substitution had a direct and debilitating impact on the T-14 Armada's production schedules. Without a consistent and reliable stream of all necessary components, assembly lines could not operate at capacity, if at all, for certain periods. The few tanks that were eventually assembled might have, in some cases, incorporated domestically produced components that were potentially less advanced or less reliable than the originally intended Western parts. This could compromise the overall performance and battlefield effectiveness of the finished tanks, falling short of the ambitious design specifications. The Sanctions storm thus directly contributed to the Armada's scarcity. The T-14 Armata, with its revolutionary design and array of advanced technologies, was destined from the outset to be an expensive piece of military hardware. No one expected it to be cheap. However, the actual per-unit cost quickly began to escalate, spiraling far beyond the initial optimistic estimates provided by Russian officials. Credible reports and analyses suggested that the price tag for a single Armata tank had ballooned to figures in the range of $4 million to $7 million, or even higher according to some sources. This made it substantially more expensive than the cost of extensively modernizing existing T-72B3 or T-90M tanks, complicating the economic calculus for mass procurement. Several intertwined factors contributed to this dramatic financial escalation and the subsequent cost overruns. The inherent complexity of developing and integrating entirely new systems, such as the unmanned turret, the advanced sensor fusion, and the Afghanit Active Protection System, naturally incurred substantial research and development expenses. The use of specialized, high-strength materials and, where still obtainable, imported high-technology components further inflated the bill of materials for each tank. Moreover, persistent production inefficiencies, exacerbated by the aforementioned supply chain disruptions, and a lack of large-scale orders, meant that crucial economies of scale were never fully realized, keeping the individual unit costs stubbornly high. The Russian Federation's defense budget, while significant, is not an inexhaustible resource. The rapidly increasing unit cost of the Armata program inevitably forced very difficult choices upon military planners and government finance officials. Limited funds had to be judiciously allocated across a wide spectrum of competing military modernization projects, from new aircraft and ships to strategic missile systems. As the T-14's price climbed and its production schedule slipped further, its relative priority within the overarching defense expenditure plan likely came under intense scrutiny. The debate intensified: invest heavily in a small number of exceptionally expensive armadas, or modernize a much larger fleet of older, proven platforms more affordably? Adding another murky layer to these financial woes was the pervasive and long-standing issue of corruption within Russia's sprawling defense sector. While the precise impact is inherently difficult to quantify, numerous reports and analyses over the years have highlighted problems such as siphoned funds, inflated procurement contracts, and general financial mismanagement plaguing military programs. It is highly plausible that a significant portion of the T-14 Armata's allocated budget was diverted or inefficiently spent due to such practices. This would have further driven up the real costs, reduced the number of units that could be purchased, and ultimately hindered the efficient production of the tank, creating a budgetary black hole. When examining the T-14 Armata purely on its published specifications, it presents a formidable profile. Its most revolutionary claim to an advantage lies squarely in crew survivability. The concept of an unmanned turret, coupled with a heavily armored crew citadel at the front of the hull, is a radical departure. This design, in theory, isolates the three crew members from the most common points of impact and catastrophic ammunition explosions. Compared to established Western main battle tanks like the American M1A2 Abrams or the German Leopard 2A7, which retain manned turrets, the Armata promises a significant leap in protecting its human operators. This potential for enhanced safety is a powerful psychological and practical asset. The T-14 was also conceived with an advanced digital architecture at its very core. It was envisioned as a true network-centric warfare platform, designed from the ground up to seamlessly integrate with other battlefield systems. This digital backbone promised superior situational awareness, faster data processing, and enhanced command and control capabilities. While Western tanks are continuously upgraded with sophisticated digital systems, many are built upon older foundational architectures. The Armada's clean slate approach, at least in its design philosophy, aimed to provide a more integrated and future-proofed digital ecosystem. This focus on information dominance was intended to give its crew a decisive cognitive edge in complex engagements. In terms of theoretical firepower, the Armada's 125mm 2A82-1M smoothbore cannon is touted as a significant improvement. Reports suggest it can fire more powerful kinetic energy rounds and advanced guided missiles through its barrel. This capability, combined with its sophisticated fire control system, aims to achieve superior range and lethality. Whispers of a future upgrade to a massive 152mm gun further fuel speculation about its ultimate offensive potential. While NATO tanks boast highly effective 120mm cannons with advanced ammunition, the Armada's armament, on paper, seeks to offer at least parity, if not a slight edge in raw hitting power and engagement options against varied targets. However, these impressive on-paper advantages come with a crucial, heavy caveat. Theoretical supremacy means very little without proven battlefield reliability and the ability to mass-produce the platform effectively. The most advanced specifications are rendered moot if the tank cannot be built in sufficient numbers, or if its complex systems prove fragile under the harsh realities of combat. The history of military technology is littered with ambitious projects that looked formidable in blueprints but failed to deliver in practice. The T-14 Armada's true standing against its competitors hinges not just on its design intent, but on its demonstrated performance and availability when it truly matters. The global landscape of armored warfare is far from static. The West certainly hasn't been idle. While the T-14 Armata made headlines with its bold claims, established and emerging military powers have been vigorously pursuing their own next-generation tank concepts and upgrades. America's Abrams X technology demonstrator, for instance, offers a compelling glimpse into the future of U.S. armor. It showcases features like a hybrid electric-diesel powertrain for silent watch capability and reduced fuel consumption, a potentially reduced crew size, AI-enabled systems, and the option for an unmanned turret, directly paralleling some of the Armada's core concepts. Germany, a traditional powerhouse in tank design, has unveiled the KF-51 Panther. This formidable machine is built around a new, more powerful 130mm main gun, promising a significant increase in firepower over existing 120mm systems. The Panther also emphasizes digital architecture, integrated drone capabilities for reconnaissance and close support, and advanced active and passive protection systems. It is clearly designed to counter and surpass threats like the T-14. This development signals a clear intent by leading NATO nations to maintain a qualitative edge in armored warfare, directly challenging any perceived Russian technological lead. Beyond these prominent examples, other nations continue to innovate. South Korea's K-2 Black Panther is already a highly capable and mature main battle tank, incorporating advanced features like hydropneumatic suspension, a sophisticated fire control system, an autoloader, and even an active protection system. It is a testament to the widespread proliferation of advanced armor technology. Nations like France with its Leclerc XLR modernization, and the United Kingdom with its Challenger 3 program, are also significantly enhancing their armored fleets. The technological race is continuous, with multiple players pushing the boundaries of what is possible in tank design and capability. Ultimately, the real measure of battlefield advantage is determined by a confluence of factors far broader than individual tank specifications. Doctrine, crew training, logistical support, and the ability to integrate tanks seamlessly with other combat arms, including air power, infantry, and increasingly, unmanned systems and AI, are paramount. The capacity to deploy platforms rapidly, in sufficient numbers, and to sustain them effectively in the field often proves more decisive than marginal differences in armor thickness or gun caliber. The T-14 Armata faces competition not just from other tanks, but from the evolving, holistic approach to modern combined arms warfare. The T-14 Armata stands as a monumental enigma in the annals of modern military hardware. It was conceived as a titan, a machine poised to rewrite the very rules of ground combat with its audacious and revolutionary design philosophy. Russia proudly heralded it as the undisputed future of armored warfare, a powerful testament to the nation's renewed technological ambition and engineering prowess. Yet, nearly a full decade since its dramatic and highly publicized unveiling on Red Square, the Armada remains more spectral than substantial. It is a potent promise whispered on the winds of strategy rather than a formidable power widely deployed on the battlefields of consequence. Its ongoing journey from a symbol of impending dominance to an icon of perplexing scarcity encapsulates a complex narrative of grand vision colliding with stubborn, unyielding reality. The steel beast, for the present moment, is a riddle wrapped in advanced armor. Its current legacy is thus one of profound and undeniable ambiguity, a story still being meticulously written in the deep shadows of speculation and limited information. The Armada was purposefully designed and aggressively marketed to be a revolution in tank development, a clear and decisive break from the long lineage of Soviet-era armor, setting an entirely new global benchmark for others to aspire to. Instead, it has inadvertently become a compelling case study, illustrating the immense multifaceted difficulties inherent in translating highly advanced, theoretically groundbreaking concepts into reliable, mass-produced battlefield systems. For the Russian Federation, it starkly highlights the deep chasm that can unfortunately exist between lofty strategic aspiration and actual industrial technological capability, particularly when operating under significant international pressure and resource constraints. For the wider global defense community, it serves as a potent reminder that even the most sophisticated designs can falter on the long, arduous road from blueprint to genuine battle readiness. Its influence so far more cautionary than definitively conquering. Looking ahead into the middle of this decade and beyond, the T-14 Armada's future path remains shrouded in considerable, almost palpable uncertainty and ongoing speculation. Can Russia genuinely muster the resources and technical acumen to resolve the deep-seated production bottlenecks and the persistent, critical reliability concerns that have reportedly plagued its development cycle from the outset? Will the prevailing economic constraints, exacerbated by prolonged sanctions and the demands of ongoing conflicts, even permit the substantial, sustained financial investment required for true mass deployment of such a costly platform? Or, alternatively, is the Armada ultimately destined to remain a highly specialized, extremely limited-run platform, a technological demonstrator whose primary long-term impact might be to inform future, perhaps less ambitious but more achievable Russian armored vehicle designs? Its ultimate role within Russia's vast military arsenal Whether as a genuine spearhead of future offensives or merely an expensive footnote in procurement history, is yet to be definitively determined by unfolding geopolitical and technological events. The complex and often contradictory saga of the T-14 Armata sends significant ripples across the entire dynamic landscape of global armored warfare, prompting serious reflection and re-evaluation among defense planners worldwide. It undeniably underscores the ever-escalating complexity and the frequently astronomical costs associated with developing truly next-generation main battle tanks in the modern era. While its direct tangible impact on current battlefields has been notably minimal, its ambitious design parameters may have inadvertently spurred further innovation and accelerated indigenous development programs in other nations who are understandably keen to counter its theoretical capabilities. Ultimately, the Armada's unfolding story reinforces a timeless military lesson. True, sustainable combat effectiveness stems not just from technological sophistication on paper, but from a robust, synergistic combination of proven battlefield reliability, scalable industrial production, highly skilled human operation, and seamless operational integration into a broader, evolving combined arms warfighting ecosystem. The future of the tank as a concept undoubtedly hinges on maintaining this delicate yet crucial balance.